They want us to believe that this is at arm's length. They want us to believe that this is transparent. They want us to believe that this is in the public interest. Empty barrel make the most noise, Madam President, ignore him. But they can't tell us what is necessary, and they can't tell us what are the performance standards. Let's read some more. The lessee shall manage and coordinate the port at all times in a manner that supports the growth of the cargo shipping industry in Belize. What does that mean? Senator Herrera? Investor confidence. An investor is entering into a contract with a government of Belize to provide management and coordination of a port in a manner that supports the growth of the cargo industry in Belize. How much containers per year? How much people employed? What is the value of investment? What is the equipment to be provided? Two years of hard work by the UDP. Lessee is authorized to provide the following services, A through V. Look at 5.4. You shall provide container yard development. To what standard? Equipment and cargo handling operations, crane, forklift from where? From Emer Hernandez? From Montero? Storage facilities for export cargo, expanded warehousing area, electric connections for bulk cargo. Deconsolidation cargo area, how big, how small? When you put it in? You see, Madam President, members of the Senate, there is a reason why the Finance and Audit Reform Act requires this type of transaction to come to the National Assembly. And people come here and wrap themselves in the flag of righteousness and rectitude and pretend to be so transparent. But when you read the same section 22 of the Finance and Audit Reform Act, it is very clear. The National Lands Act shall apply. The National Lands Act shall apply. That's what the section says. Minister Castro was many things, but the one thing he wasn't was the Minister of Lands. So when you lease out government property, Mr. Senator Perifeet, and when you apply the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Senator Perifeet, you go according to what Section 22 says. The National Lands Act apply. Minister Castro, as he was, did not have power under the National Lands Act to enter into this transaction. But I want to say to colleagues in this Senate, and let me be brief on this point, because everybody says it's going to court, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of legal arguments. But Senator Perifeet, who I believe passed land law, I think he passed it. Well, hold on.
Let's stick to the debate.
One of the things you learn, I think, like in your first month or second month, and Senator Pitts will help him on this, in land law, is that a lease is called an estate in land. It creates an interest in land for, calm yourself down, relax yourself.
As if we please, thank you.
Just relax, calm down. Take a little chill pill, patience. It creates an interest in land. It gives exclusive possession to the tenant. It transfers an interest from the landowner for the period of the lease exclusively to the tenant. Don't say yes, because that's a disposal. I will tell you this, Madam President. I will tell you this. Be quiet, man.
Senator, if we can please comply with Standing Order 40.
I listen to you in blissful silence. Behave yourself. I say this, and I'm serious about this. Minister Castro, after the National Assembly had been dissolved, entered into this lease 2 days before the general election. Now listen carefully. There is absolutely zero metrics, zero standards, zero qualifications that have to be met. Zero standards. Man bring one rented forklift, will I provide forklift? He bring one broke down crane and put it there, I provide a crane. There is no obligation in this document for new equipment, for modern equipment, and most importantly, in response to Bishop and to Senator Smith, how much people will be employed? How much Belizeans will be employed? Where is that? I close by saying this. Caribbean Court of Justice, in a different context, has spoken to the power of government after Parliament have been dissolved. It is called a caretaker government. You continue the day-to-day, ordinary affairs of the government. You do not, in a smoke-filled room, you do not, without public disclosure, as I said on the last occasion, if this was so good for the Belizean people, 2 days before the election, why didn't they have it all over the place and boast to the people of St. Crick that this is what we got for you? So great, so good. No, it was done in secret. It was done in the quiet of night. It was done without public knowledge. It was done by a minister who did not have the power to do it. It was done after the National Assembly had been dissolved. And it was done 2 days before the United Democratic Party well knew that they were going to be voted out of office, and so they hurried this, hoping to bind the incoming administration. Madam President, the House of Representatives has, for the reasons expressed in this House of Representatives, voted to disapprove of this type of transaction. And I say, today, those of us who say we are committed to good governance, to transparency and accountability, should reject this lease between the Ecological and the Commerce for the Development for the Commerce by Port. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that whereas Section 105 of the Mines and Minerals Act, Chapter 226 of the Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, hereinafter referred to as the Act, provides for the establishment of a board for the purposes of determining all complaints, claims, or disputes arising out of the provisions of the Act, and whereas the board will be called a Mining Conflict Resolution Board, and whereas Section 106(1) of the Act provides that this board shall consist of 5 persons to be appointed by the Minister for the time being responsible for mines and minerals, as follows: Registrar General or his nominee or her nominee, Chief Magistrate, one person representing the mining industry, two persons approved by the House of Representatives by resolution. And whereas Section 1061D of the Act further provides that two persons approved by the House of Representatives by way of resolution shall be appointed by the Minister. And whereas Mr. Ian Gillett, licensed land surveyor, and Mr. Arsenio Burgos, accountant, both being duly qualified to be appointed as members of the board, have been recommended by the Minister with responsibility for natural resources, mining and petroleum, and also for the time being responsible for mines and minerals, to be so appointed to the board for a period of 6 months. Now therefore be it resolved that this Honourable House, having perused the curriculum vitae of Mr. Ian Gillett, licensed land surveyor, and Mr. Arsenio Burgos, accountant, and being satisfied that both are fit and proper persons to be appointed as members of the board under the Act, hereby approves the appointment of both Mr. Ian Gillett, licensed land surveyor, and Mr. Arsenio Burgos, accountant, as members of the Mining Conflict Resolution Board with effect from the first day of June 2021.
Honourable members, that motion is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that whereas the Government of Belize ratified the original standard text of the Small Quantities Protocol under the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement in connection with the Treaty for the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons on the 21st of January 1997, and whereas the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency concluded for ratification a revised standard text of the Small Quantities Protocol on the 20th of September 2005, and whereas the revised protocol was endorsed by the Review Conference of the Parties of the NPT to strengthen the application of the nuclear safeguard system, and whereas the Government of Belize is desirous of ratifying the revised protocol pursuant to Article 23 of the CSA, and whereas Section 61A2A of the Belize Constitution, as amended by the Belize Constitution and Sixth Amendment Act, provides that the Senate shall authorize the ratification of any treaty by the Government of Belize. Now therefore be it resolved that the Senate authorizes the Government of Belize to ratify the revised standard text of the Small Quantities Protocol, the amended text of which is attached, is hereto annexed.
Honourable members, that motion is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report.
Bills for second reading.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to enhance Belize's competitiveness and stimulate renewed growth in the international financial services sector, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize Senator Khalid Bilal.
Good morning, Madam President. I too will have to get used to calling you by the title of the office which you now hold. I beg your indulgence for a few brief words before I get into the meat, or in this case, maybe the bones, of my intervention this morning. I would like to start off with a few words of gratitude, firstly to God the Father for having brought me to this point. Secondly, to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for having had the confidence to appoint me to the seat. Thirdly, to my wife, my family, my friends, my close colleagues, and all those who have wished me well on this journey that I have embarked on today. To my colleagues on this side of the chamber who have included me very early on to ensure that I wasn't a total fish out of water when I showed up this morning. To the Leader of Government Business and all my colleagues who have spoken before me, I sincerely appreciate your very warm words of welcome, and I reciprocate the expression of willingness to work with you. Looking forward to spirited debates at times, but certainly the constructive work of forwarding the Belizean agenda.
Senator, if you wish, you can take off your mask.
Oh, thank you very much, Madam President. That is a lot better indeed. Before I get into my brief intervention this morning, I do want to take the time to express condolences to the family of Mrs. Rose Nicholas from right here in the city of Belmopan, who has now passed on. Her husband, Mr. Lawrence Nicholas, of course, well known from his football days in his youth, but more recently as the government printer and the principal of Print Belize, and to their daughters and remaining family members, we express our condolences to them. I will be very brief, as I indicated, Madam President, because the truth of the matter is that our side, we really don't have very many qualms or misgivings about the proposed amendment bill. As noted last week by the Honorable Prime Minister in his introduction in the House, the IFS sector, International Financial Services sector here in Belize, has indisputably been in decline for roughly the last half decade or so, and that is across our local licensed service providers, new incorporations by companies, as well as the annual license renewals by same said companies. Having lost almost 2/3 of its peak registered population, what the Honorable Prime Minister described as migration might more aptly be put as a mass exodus, with 2 out of every 3 companies that had been registered at its peak now having pulled out of Belize. In speaking with players across the country, players in this industry, the consensus seems to be that it is a combination of new regulatory requirements imposed by international bodies such as the EU, in tandem with more attractive terms present in territories that offer the same services. The Prime Minister referred to them as competitor jurisdictions, that have predominantly contributed to the current trajectory of this sector. In light of the looming expiration of the tax exemption or tax waiver period for these companies at the end of this very month, compounded by the present economic circumstances prevailing in Belize, it's clear that the amendments as proposed are indeed necessary. The government seeks to regain Belize's foothold in this sector, and we on this side would certainly implore it to continue pushing measures that would not only achieve a leveling off, but consequently see the return of a growing and very robust sector in the country of Belize. We take note of the increase in the fees for incorporation and annual renewal as an offset for the revenue lost due to the removal of taxes levied, and we will hope that the projected increased income to be derived does indeed materialize. Equally important to us, as the black and red of the ledger, is the preservation of the hundreds of jobs tied to this industry, north to south, east to west, in Belize, and the positive effect of the bill towards that end. Before I close, 2 minor concerns, and I'm hoping that either the Leader of Government Business or perhaps the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance would be able to expound on them or clarify, explain. One is the effect on local local companies, and what, if any, the removal of these taxes will have on them. And secondly, I caught it very late, and I have been trying to get some clarification on it. In the arrangement of the clauses at item 8, it speaks to the repeal of subsection 2, and that is repealing subsection 2 of chapter 270, section 114(2). And if you will allow me, I will very quickly read it. It says, if a company fails to pay the amount due as the license fee under subsection 1 by the date specified therein, the license fee increases by 10% of that amount. Fairly straightforward, and I had been trying to determine whether the following subsection had been repealed, or if it is that repealing 2 automatically triggers the nullification of 3, but there is a subsection 3 that comes after that that says if a company fails to pay the amount due as an increased license fee under subsection 2 by the 31st October, then the license fee increases by 50% of the license fee specified in subsection 1. So we talked to subsection 2, but I noticed there wasn't anything on subsection 3, and I look forward to being enlightened as to why that is the case. With that said, Madam President, I thank you.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Madam President, just briefly, I rise to support the bill first of all. I think that, it's been probably close to 20 years that the EU and the OECD countries have been intent on crushing this sector throughout the Caribbean. And I applaud the current administration for their efforts in trying to save, as Senator Bilal just mentioned, the sector. I mean, there has been a huge decline in terms of what it is now compared to what it was 15 years ago. And so I'm hoping that with these adjustments, with the waiver expiring at the end of June 30th and the previous adjustments that have been made in terms of complying with the requirements of the EU and the OECD countries, and further actions that may need to be taken going forward, that perhaps we can get the sector up and going again. One of the concerns that I had, but based after talking to key players in the industry and some research, I was a little concerned that perhaps, we may be, increasing the risk of attracting the ire of the OECD and the EU again. But I'm comfortable now that this is not the case, and I hope that we can get the sector up and going again. It's certainly, I think we need to get this sector and many more sectors going again. I think the economy badly needs it. I came into the country on Monday and I was extremely encouraged to see how filled the planes were coming in. And so that is a good thing, and hopefully the tourism takes off again and we can get back and try to normalize things economically. I think we're seeing the impact of this, and I know that there is the emoluments bill coming up, but it's a sad thing. I mean, there are casualties because of where we are right now, and so hopefully this sector and other sectors can revive and improve our economic standing. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Chris Cowie.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise just to make a quick comment on the bill, as well as in response to concerns raised by Honorable Senator Bilal. As Senator Herrera has spoken to, this is certainly an effort to save the international financial services sector. It is in a sustained period of decline, principally over the last 5 years. However, there are various reasons for that decline. We believe certainly the fact of the adjustments or the evolution, if you will, of the mandates put on Belize by various international organizations, including the EU and the OECD. The effect on the sector has been dramatic. At the same time, we believe that there is still a significant opportunity that remains for this sector, and that it can restore to what it was and really go far beyond where it is or where it has been if the sector is embraced in the evolved form that it now finds itself in. In effect, we no longer have an offshore sector. We have a hybrid, we now have an onshore sector that connects to international business and international persons. And this is where we have to look at how we conduct our business and how we develop our laws. With respect to concerns over requirements or obligations put on us by these outside parties, that is a concern that we seek to ensure that we address as we look forward to the development of this sector. So when we look at that bill accounts for that concern. Ring fencing, in effect, has been the mantra of some of these organizations, and the fact of Belize's laws providing for ring fencing. Those amendments over the past couple of years in both the International Business Companies Act and in the Income and Business Tax Act address those concerns specifically. This bill as well takes account of that. This bill also takes account of the newly enacted Economic Substance Act and seeks to incorporate certain provisions of that into the bill so that the standards that are expected of us are maintained and that there is no ring fencing. As an example, the provisions that relate to related party and the company speak specifically to that, that in terms of related parties, they have to be resident in Belize, and the definition focuses in on that. And as far as companies in general to which this benefit in the bill attaches, that is limited to those entities that are resident outside of EU blacklisted jurisdictions. So the bill, as drafted, looks to ensure that we don't run afoul of any of these commitments that Belize has made to these organizations. On the matter of the effect on local business, because there is no ring fencing, the impact of this legislation, once passed, applies both to the international entity as well as the local entity. So it, in effect, does provide a benefit for local holding companies, local businesses, just the same as it would to a foreign business or foreign entity. And the overall picture or the overall context of it is the beneficiaries in terms of this sector include the persons who partake in this sector, the persons who are employed in this sector, and the persons who are likely to continue to be newly employed by this sector. This sector now, as an onshore sector, does in many ways involve the development of or economic substance in Belize for these international companies. As we mentioned, the reference to the reduction in active companies. We are at present at the level of 24,000 companies or thereabouts. We were as high as over 70,000 active companies. But even at 24,000 companies, if any significant portion of those now require economic substance in Belize, then that means their core income generating activities need to be in Belize, which means that there needs to be use of commercial office space, employment of secretarial or additional staff, and that will mean new employment. That will mean construction. So there is, if embraced, the opportunity for a new industry, if you will, through this sector. So I think it's important for us to give this sector that chance. Sure, ensuring that we maintain our commitments, but at least open up that opportunity for this sector to thrive. And I believe that this bill does achieve that, and we look forward to its due enactment. Thank you.
Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to enhance Belize's competitiveness and stimulate renewed growth in the international financial services sector, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to enhance Belize's competitiveness and stimulate renewed growth in the international financial services sector, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, this is a short amendment to the bill. To the act, the act currently says the Court of Appeal shall comprise of the President plus 4 judges. That has limited the amount of sittings because every panel has to be 3 judges. The intention is to appoint at least 6 so that you can have 2 sessions or 2 panels sitting and running simultaneously. The intention is to try to remove the backlog of Court of Appeal cases that have built up over time. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Sheena Pitts.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I make my very brief intervention on this one, I join with my colleagues in welcoming Senator Belize, and I am particularly pleased because I consider us now on this side a force and a trinity of sorts, but I do not invite my colleagues to deduce that of that trinity I am the Holy Spirit. Nonetheless, Senator Belize, we look forward to your contribution, and we look forward to that continued tone of measured, reasonable voice that will assist us in the work of the Senate and move Belize progressively forward, if that be the case. In the present bill, I must say that any attempt to clear the backlog by hiring more judges is always welcomed. And so this bill is a bill that is much needed. I wonder if on the other side, apart or in addition to having simultaneous sittings with 6 judges, we can go even further to consider having a full-time court of appeal, as is the case in other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth. My only concern, Madam President, is that we invite into our territory on the basis of the best available legal minds. And with that comes with it the necessity to be able to remunerate decently those legal minds. Also, what comes with it when we are recruiting, where we can secure the best or the better of those who are willing to come, is to ensure that when they are here, the environment is conducive to their productivity. And I say that because if we recall the budget, the amounts set out for the judiciary did not and is not projected to increase over the years. I can tell you from experience, Madam President, that it is not the best of situations that our judicial officers do not have at their disposal quick and easy access to resources that enables them to discharge of their duties. I recall, Madam President, in a matter in which I was involved, and the leader of government business was on the other side. It is, for me, quite remarkable and congratulatory that I know and I can say that there are firms like his own whose library are exceptional. Our Supreme Court library, I won't even say it's secondary to my learned friend's one. And in that matter, the sitting judge sought reliance and the kind assistance of texts from the leader of government business law firm. I was embarrassed, but my embarrassment was contained by the fact that he had material that assisted the court in disposing the matter. No, I don't know if my learned friend remembers that matter. I only jog his memory because it is one of those ones that my senior and I succeeded against you. But we, and this is very serious and sobering, because the judiciary, meaning to be independent, cannot be embarrassed by not even having, for example, LexisNexis, which is a legal research resource for cases, texts, and materials. We don't keep in our law library at the Supreme Court updated collection of books. And in as much as it is great that we are expanding the Court of Appeal and we are addressing the apparent suggestion of justice delayed and justice denied, that we do so with the scales of justice being equal, in that we have the people and the people have their resources. We invite the government to, we see that, and I don't want to make it appear as if though I want to find a reason to criticize within the confines of this bill, but we see the government finding monies for other projects and other aspects of our country. And we're saying on this side, we urge the government to also, whether we simply use that, as I refer to the monument leading on to the Philip Gosen Highway, that begging hand, and beg for some assistance with legal resources, we do so, but we would be doing a disservice to distinguished people by bringing them here and putting them in an environment where we, as a country and as an independent judiciary, cannot afford them the resources that they must have on hand. And that is a matter within the context of texts, materials, and whatnot. The other aspect of resources for our judicial officers, it is a pity that our last Chief Justice was unable to accomplish some of the things that were meant to be accomplished. but it is not late, and we must not lose with him the saltiness that may have been left in our mouths or minds about him, but that when you go to other jurisdictions, judges have judicial clerks to assist them. There was a point in time when we were, and as far as I am aware, direct information, aware that at least in 2 instances I can recall, a recruitment in the form of judicial clerks for the assistance of judges. The work in the Court of Appeal, much like the work in any court, is serious work. The Assistant Registrar Appeals on her own now will be left to attempt to serve 6 sitting judges. And so, with a bill like this should come some consideration that perhaps we beg or we borrow, but we find money to hire clerks to be available to persons who we recruit on the basis of them being the best of the best that are willing to come to our jurisdiction, so that when they're here, they're not frustrated by our culture of work, as has been the case in the past, and then leave. Because in the judiciary, it goes without saying that we are crippled, and we would continue to be crippled if we do not pump the kind of money necessary to ensure that the rooms our judges are in are conducive, the workload that they are under is manageable, and the support staff that they have are effective and functioning. And so, to repeat, unfortunately, I want to make it clear that we support expanding the Court of Appeal, but we feel the bill fell short of incorporating other aspects of accommodating such an enlargement of the Court of Appeal. And those are my contributions, Madam President.
Very quickly, I've been struggling with this concept, and maybe...
I recognize Senator Michael Perfy.
Sorry, Madam President, I think I still haven't chilled from the last time the leader of government basically told me to chill. But I guess you could say that the flaw with the laws that existed before was that he said you should have the president on 4. Unfortunately, there was a ceiling, but fortunately, at least there was a floor, 4. when you replace for with such, I mean, it's kind of crazy to contemplate, but you wouldn't even want to contemplate it in my view. Couldn't we have a provisor or something to indicate that you will have the president and such others, provided you will have no less than 4, for example? Because the way you read it here when you replace 4 with such is that you could have 10 if you want, but if you put such, then you could also have 1, which is clearly not the intent of the amendment. But I think if you have a provisor to just make sure that you have a minimum in mind, and that you can have such others that can go way beyond that minimum, but not below. I don't know what is your take on that?
Madam President, before responding, in accordance with Standing Order 10.8, I move that the proceedings on the order of paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceedings on the order paper be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I shall be brief in responding to the comments made. Firstly, in relation to the last comment from Senator Perrefit, I think we can be confident, first of all, that the bill has a title, and it says to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal, and therefore an interpretation will be in that context that it was intended to expand. With respect to the floor, all I will say is any government that seeks to reduce the number of judges in the Court of Appeal below the current 4, and if the 6 that are appointed below the then 6, they will be the subject of the wrath of the people of Belize and the legal profession, led, I am sure, by Senator Pitts. Madam President, there will be no one in their right mind who will reduce the number of judges. I think we can be comforted with that. The sentiments expressed by Senator Pitts are obviously on point. I would characterize her address as one calling for judicial reform. This bill is dealing with an emergency that we are currently facing, and clearly the expansion of the judges, not only in the Court of Appeal, but in the Supreme Court, would be a part of that reform. I can assure Senator Pitts that the Attorney General is already working on a much wider system-wide reform of a judicial branch of our government. It will obviously take time. It will be subject to consultation, and eventually we'll end up here where I'm sure we will have a full debate. All I want to do was to thank her for supporting the amendment and to say to her and to other senators that the time will come when we will have to look at the whole picture in a holistic way. I am aware of some of the persons who I believe will be appointed, and I know that an extensive exercise was undertaken by the Attorney General to find persons across the Commonwealth and in the Caribbean, and I believe that they will enjoy the confidence of the bar and the wider Belizean community. Obliged, Madam President, and I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
The bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to move a second reading of a bill for an act to provide in the public interest for the reduction in salaries and allowances of certain persons appointed to hold a public office, having regard to the deteriorated state of public finances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam President, the bill before us is the implementation of that which we did in the budget debate. The budget was passed by this Honorable Senate by a majority, in which it approved the reduction in salaries, benefits, and emoluments. This bill seeks to implement and provide the legal framework for that implementation, for that decision which was taken. Madam President, I do wish to notify my colleagues that I propose in the committee of the whole Senate to move an amendment to Clause 8 of the bill. It currently reads, "This act shall come into force on the June 1st, 2021. I propose to add 3 words. This act shall be deemed to come into force on June 1st, 2021.
I recognize Senator Michael Purphy.
Madam President, how can I support a bill that cuts my pay? I see the National Assembly, we already have a massive monthly salary of $900, and it's going to be slashed, Madam President. I cannot in good spirit, with the hard work that we put in and my fellow senators, agree to such a bill. Madam President, we just reiterate our objection to any kind of withdrawal of money out of the hands of people who need to spend in a down economy. The United Democratic Party does not accept that we need to cut people's pay. Don't think that that is in the best interest of the economy at this time. We believe that the Taiwanese have pledged, according to the Prime Minister, over $80 million to help with budgetary expenses, which is the same amount of money that the government wants to cut. And I understand that, not going to re-debate it or re-litigate it. How do you tell people who have been in the system a long time ago, and now you're adding Court of Appeal judges who will come with vehicles, with salaries, with offices, with secretaries? And then when you mention judicial officers, no, not saying that I would defend them too. You does not include magistrate, senior magistrates, nor chief magistrate. Now, it doesn't seem as well here that you're cutting the pay of Supreme Court judges. These are the people who will be cut. Registrar General, Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court, Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court, Assistant Registrar of the Supreme Court, Deputy Registrar of the Court of Appeal, Deputy Solicitor General, Assistant Solicitor General, Senior Crown Counsel, Legal Counsel, Legal Officer, but does not include magistrates, senior magistrates, and chief magistrate. I don't know if they will fall into the general cut for public officers, or they will get no cut at all. But I'm saying, when you take out a piece of legislation and you cut everybody specifically except the magistrates and the judges, I have to say the magistrates and the judges themselves will tell you that they're assisted to a large extent by these very same people. So you're cutting people's pay and asking them to do more work, because remember as well, Madam President, we passed a piece of legislation here the other day. We're asking people to deliver judgments within a certain time. We're asking people to be more efficient and to work harder and to clear up backlog and all of that, but yet we're cutting their pay. I just think that it doesn't make sense. You shouldn't cut the judges and the magistrates and the chief magistrates' pay either. I'm not proposing that you cut them along with, I'm saying leave these people's pay alone along with the chief magistrate and the magistrates and the Supreme Court judges. So I don't know if they will be in that general cut, and then there's a specific cut over here. What? Oh, okay. Okay. Talk loud, man. I like here so I could respond on my feet. But I mean, indeed, when you look at Madam President, then they cut your pay too, you know. I don't know if you may want to read this bill a second time. They cut your pay. But I don't think that it should. When you look at senators, I mean, we are in the Senate. It's even worse for ministers. I don't know what the new policies of the new Minister of Finance, but Clark, am I wrong in saying, man, when you're a minister, then you give the Senate pay. So there's nothing to cut, but then it's a dual function that you have to perform, except for the Attorney General, who doesn't have to be a member of the Senate. But there are ministers in here who also have to prepare and do work in the Senate. So they already don't make any. The rest of us make, like I said, $900 a month, if I'm not mistaken. And then additional duties on top, they will be cut. I don't think that the minister's pay should be cut either. You're expecting people to perform. You're expecting people to perform at a certain level. And I think these people have to be compensated. I was hoping that there would be a bill to increase our pay because we do a lot of work. And you have equal pay for equal work, man. Come on, we do a lot of work in the Senate. We quarrel a lot, but we work too. And I don't think that this is the time to be cutting anybody's pay, no matter how small the pay is, because then you cut it by $100 or $50. That's how much less groceries, less beer, less whatever I do to buy, I can buy. And it reduces the business activity of the merchants who deal with these goods and services. So it's just a reiteration, Madam President, that do not support the cutting of salaries for anybody. We want the government to come up with ways to grow the economy and to make sure that these people can get their full pay in a downtime that the government says exists. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Elena Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to make my contributions to this bill before us. And I'm sure we know the position of the unions. We gave our vote at the budget debate. But, Madam President, we have a few things that continue to concern us. And we know that we are here to approve a reduction in our salaries because we are being told that, well, you know what, we really can't afford it. But as my colleague mentioned just a while ago, Madam President, and we keep saying these things, and it's as if though we are not being heard or it's not important. You are telling me that our situation is so bad that we must cut your salary, but you must provide the same service. Yet we see that hirings continue. Yet we see that we are spending on other things that we should be cutting back on. And I really and truly, I don't want to have to be going through my previous presentation, but some of those concerns that we shared remain the same, Madam President. We expect that, for example, our teachers and our public officers, and I can speak more for us, that we are returning to the classrooms, and we expect that all of these things must be in our classrooms with a 10% reduction in our salaries. But we don't see where there is a push to say to our managing authorities that you must do your part so that the teachers don't have to pick up your slack. And then we have, unfortunately, we have some of these same managing authorities who, after having had an audience with those persons responsible, feel that they must abide by such a request and further cut our salaries for fighting, for standing up, for using our rights to speak out against what we don't agree with. Madam President, if it were that we were in such bad state, then we would not see the type of hirings that we are seeing, the type of spending that we are seeing. And it is unfair to expect us, the persons who are going to be most affected by this cut. Because yes, you can say, well, the ministers are getting a cut too, and we are being cut by 15%, and you are only getting 10%. But as we said before, 10% of my salary means a whole lot, because I have no other means of income, no other allowance that I can fall back on. So it means that my family will be in a worse position than a person who is able to fall back on some allowances. But Madam President, in addition to the effects of this cut, and it's not just going to be on those who are going to be suffering the cut, it will have a ripple effect on everything. We will spend less at these places. I guess we'll be cooking more because we won't be able to afford to purchase food anymore. And a lot of times I can tell you that our teachers remain in school during lunchtime because many of our students no longer go home for lunch. And instead of going home, we remain there because we have all of these children to look at, to oversee even during the lunch break. And one may say, well, but you don't have to, man, you have a lunch break, take a lunch break. But when something happens to a child during that time, we are held responsible. So in addition to all of those things, Madam President, and I hope that the leader of government business can respond to this. I know that there was a moratorium on hiring. And I don't know where we are with that. Obviously, I guess it's no longer in effect. But Madam President, we have to also look at some of these conventions and other things that have an effect on what is happening. We have a lot of women who will be affected. Where are we in advocating for women so that they can be able to properly provide for their families? And then there's the matter of overtime, because there was a limit placed on overtime. And so now you are cutting my salary, and there are times when I must do overtime work, and I'm not talking about me personally, but mostly public service. You would have to engage in overtime, but yet you are only being allowed to be paid for a certain number of hours. And so how is that going to help? That you cut my salary, I have to do the same amount of work that I would normally be doing. I may have to work overtime, but I can only be paid for a certain amount. And then we are aware that there's an offer for a reduction in hours. And so public service will be being given an hour per day. It's 5 hours per week reduction, but that doesn't mean that you will work less. It just means that you will do the same work in less time. But one of the concerns, Madam President, is in terms of our military and how that reduction in work hours would affect them in any way. because we know the work that they have, and so they may not be able to benefit from such an offer. For our end as teachers, we have not yet come to agreement as to how that would work. And I just want to make it very clear that when this offer was provided to us, was placed on the table, and my colleague is here and he can attest to this, that our initial concern was, well, how will this affect our children? So it wasn't that we were, oh yes, less hours. The first reaction was, how would we be able to work through this so that it doesn't affect our children too negatively? But we are yet to work that out to see how that would be able to work for us, since our rules are a bit different from that of the public service. In terms of when we look at our salaries being reduced, we look at that as property being taken away from us. And if you are taking property away from people, then you should compensate them properly, equally to match what is taken away from you. And I'm sure we are aware of the worldwide pronouncement that was made by the Prime Minister, in which he spoke of performance bonus. I don't even remember the words now. Performance bonus option being given to us. But, Madam President, as my colleague said, this is certainly not a time for us to be looking at any reduction in anybody's salary, especially for those persons who provide the services that allow our government to be able to function. And so, from the NTUCB then, we are not able to support this bill before us. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Kevin Herrera.
Let me take off my mask, Madam President, sir. Thanks. Madam President, this has been a very difficult issue for me personally, and I'm sure not nearly as difficult as it has been for Senator Smith and our union brothers and sisters. I feel deeply for them because it is a tough time. They are being asked to bear a lot of the costs in relation to the economic fallout caused by COVID and a decline in the economy. It's an extremely difficult economic time. One that will take us several years to get back on track with. And so it's during the budget debate a few months ago, we supported the budget, and in that budget, contained the provisions for the salary cut. And so today, we're not changing our position on it, but it is an extremely difficult issue for us. I wish we had an alternative. I wish I could have suggested one. I've looked at the numbers. I'm trained in looking at financial information. I just don't see an alternative in the short term. And it is the short term that bothers us. Um, it is an extremely difficult situation. I mean, if you look at the effects and the impact in terms of the specifics on the economy over the past year, we looked at a 72% decline in tourism. Tourism accounts for 60% of our foreign exchange and 40% of our GDP. Our public debt has ballooned to around 130% of GDP. Now, this is a massive problem. And in this situation, there will be many casualties. Many of us will have to go through a lot with respect to sacrifices. The private sector has had to make many adjustments. People have lost their jobs. In some cases, salaries have been slashed by 50%. And I'm not saying this to say that, well, we had to make those sacrifices, so you have to. No, I wish it wouldn't have to be like that for the public sector. But it is a very difficult time, and I don't see a whole lot of options. In fact, I really don't see any in the short term, like I mentioned. And I say this to say that it is extremely important, Madam President, that we maintain two things. We maintain our currency peg at 2 to 1, and it is extremely important if that slides, given the composition of Belize's economy with respect to exports and imports, the times will be a lot more difficult than it is right now if we lose that currency peg. The other issue is, if we go to the IMF because we're not able to make the adjustments internally, we lose a lot of control. And you know what the prescription of the IMF is? Cut the public sector, raise taxes, and all the other prescriptions that they have been prescribing for decades. And so that really forms the basis of my position, Madam President. I don't want us to lose control of the situation. We've been dealt a very difficult hand, a bad hand, in fact. And I think we need to make the most of it. The short term is what is troubling us. And if we could make the type of adjustments, and I completely understand the argument that, hey, we'll have less to spend, and so business, that is true. But then what is the alternative in the short term? I would hope that, that we can continue working together. I think communication is key. We need to continue talking to the unions. We need to continue talking to the private sector. We need to have this dialogue where we can understand and we can have some type of buy-in in terms of the shared sacrifices that are required. But it's not something that we'll get out of in a year, perhaps not even in 2 years. In fact, the public debt, in terms of bringing it down to manageable levels, will take years. We can only hope that tourism bounces back the way it should. We can only hope that those persons in other countries are being locked up for over a year are dying to get out and just get on the plane and come down. We can only hope that sectors like the BPO continue to expand and grow and to, continue to add to to the employment situation. But some of these things take a little time. Let's hope that the other sectors hold. And like I said, it's not an easy issue for me to get up here and support what we're doing, what the bill seeks to do. But I just don't know of an alternative right now, Madam President. And so with that, I'll close my remarks. I would hope that we can continue discussing this in a sober way. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Sheena Pitts.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I stand here with some regret because I surmise that we can all note I'm not my usual 100, but I hope it does not. I'm trying to ensure it does not take away from my work for the people of Belize. On our last occasion, I said, perhaps there must be some kind of disconnect between us who are appointed versus those who are elected. And I say that for a reason. You see, we can't allow ourselves in here to not or to be sheltered by not having to put in that footwork in constituencies to earn votes that put elected officials into office on the basis that their lives for the next 5 years will be better. When the budget was introduced, on this side, we did not agree with it. And remaining consistent on this bill, we do not agree with it. Senator Smith, I invite you to consider. Very early this morning, Senator Belize and I were talking, and he directed my mind to Creole parlance and adages. And now you can see this situation, what they're asking some Belizeans to do is out of misery. We love company because I the suffer, you for suffer too. All of we for suffer. They're not all of we to win. They're not everybody for win, but they're everybody for suffer. That is my problem with this. How is it that in directing our minds to finding a solution, it is easier for us to conclude that sufferation across the board is the answer? No, my salary being cut. You know what? My conscience is easier that will happen because it puts me not on the same level, but at least Belizeans will see that in this instance, in the upper house, for those of us who are remunerated, we too will suffer a cut. But Senator Smith said, in some person's case where they have no alternative source of employment, as personally speaking, in my case, who I am a professional, and so I don't want it to be misconstrued that when it falls from my mouth, it rolls onto your ear and you receive me by saying, it doesn't bother me or it doesn't affect me. But in my case, I will be able to pay my bills in time, on time, every month, as opposed to the other person who has no other means of income. Madam President, I have a cautious concern in law on the document because it seeks to override what our supreme law does, which is the Constitution. And if Madam President would direct her attentions to section 4, where it says, notwithstanding anything contained in sections 110D and 110F of the Belize Constitution. That is telling you that this bill is saying, and I say with caution, no? The supreme law of the land we won't listen to, we won't be guided by. We'll be guided by the power the government is seeking in this document to do what it has set out to do in the budget. Now, I do not, even though I'm in the business of litigation, I don't consider myself litigious. And I am not inviting business, but I would encourage persons who are affected to seek legal advice on whether or not the Constitution can be touched this way. Now, I hear Senator Herrera speak to not being able to see any other way. And I do not have the eyes or the experience that he has that has put him in respectfully the unfortunate position of not being able to see it any other way. I also do not want to appear as if though I have any red myopia in that my opposition to the bill is just that. But if you look at the definition section, which would be the interpretation section, section 2, it tells you about allowances, basis year, and that sort of thing. Madam President, we go to 4 sub 3, and we see HODs, their entertainment allowances will be cut by 25% in the basis year. And that basis year, 2020, 2021. HODs. We look to Section 5, where it deals with MPs and what their cuts are. The emoluments payable for their basis year is 15%. 15%. The allowances payable to MPs reduced to 50%. This is no red myopia, but that is not enough. If we ask what other alternatives are there, let us see the greatest sacrifices from those at the top. I've said before that the government must do equal to or better than the last administration. At the onset of the pandemic, the Right Honorable Dean Barrow yielded 100% of his salary. Senior and junior ministers yielded 100% of their allowances. Match that. Do better than that, so that when everybody else is taking their cut, they know that for true, all of we in the same boat and misery, they suffer together. But that is not the case here. Why is the government's cabinet so heavy? Reduce the size of the cabinet. There were some MPs who came in and said, I want no vehicle. I use my own. And I would not want to reduce our government officials to not be able to be distinguished as such by suggesting any kind of treatment to them that would not be befitting of an elected post. However, Madam President, there are other areas that cuts can be made. Section 6 deals with pensions, and it was my position before, and it remains the same, that those persons who have already worked and receiving their pensions at a time when there is only inflation, why are we reducing the populace to not only struggle, but an apparent, persistent, consistent struggle? No, this in the first schedule identifies persons to whom are covered. And my knee-jerk reaction to seeing the Commandant of the Coast Guard, Commander of the Belize Defense Force, and the Commissioner of Police was simple. We can only be hesitant to the fact that our land and sea borders are threatened, and every now and then we have an incident for which we rely on those security persons, the Coast Guard and the Defense Force. And I ask myself, separate and apart from having to accept the majority and accept the equalizing of struggle, why would we want to demoralize people who are at the forefront of our security? Our crime situation, it is yet to be seen what new approach will be taken to address it. The Commissioner of Police, however anybody wants to criticize or not criticize, but he is the head of the police department for whom protects and enforces our laws. But we're cutting their pays. Everybody pays. I end my contribution to this, Madam President. Senator Herrera asked and hoped that there is dialogue and that we talk and we try to find a way. But, and I've even said it before, the government is a machine of institutions that is oiled by people. The government has institutions that, if on the one hand you are taking away, there is a mechanism on the other hand to assist persons to shoulder the burden. And by that, I mean this. During the pandemic, no grocery store lost business. During the pandemic, food was the one item that had to be replenished, and people spent their money on. That was the priority. We cannot be blue-eyed and not see the prices on the shelves that have moved in a direction that is making it oppressive for people to afford to live. Where and what is consumer protection doing about it? So then, I have heard the Deputy Prime Minister say that no, government would ever want to make a decision like this at a time like this. Our backs are against the wall. If I am to take that and accept that, then we invite the government to activate its other arms and machinery to ensure that the public, when they go to buy, that the dollar could stretch. No matter how much the change in pump prices are, we know our mileage to get here is the same. I am not complaining about that, because I do find myself that it would be hypocritical for me to stand here personally knowing that I have an alternative source to say something like that. But what about those who cannot? And so, Madam President, I cannot support the bill as I did not support the budget. But it is already is by majority. All I hope to accomplish through my obvious exhaustion is that the government does something to control the prices on the shelves. I do not frequent supermarkets, perhaps a privilege, but I do. And there was one occasion when I did. And there is one recurrent item I buy. And Madam President, would you believe that as items are lined on that shelf, because I am one of those idiosyncratic persons, I check container, I check expiration, I don't want the dusty, rusty can, you know, that sort of thing. So I'm looking through the row. The first two items had one price. By the time I reached to the third in the back, it was a different and higher price. And by the time I reached to the sixth in the back, it was a different and yet higher price. If we are to swallow the pill of we need to together sacrifice, please don't make the sacrifice go in vain. Check up on those businesses. Let those departments go in and do what they need to do. The sharp inflation is widening the gap of poverty. Madam President, I do not know if you share the view, but I don't see a middle class in Belize. You are either rich or you are poor. if I am to consider an in-between, hand to mouth, Senator Smith, this month I pay my bill, next month I don't. What you're asking people to resort to the first and oldest profession? Forgive my suggestion, but I'm wondering, leader of government business, what it is we're not seeing, or how it is we cannot see the correlation between poverty and crime. So when mothers are home and have been receiving this kind of information and reading, hey lady say, me no care what you do, you know, you better go find it, 'cause my picnic hungry. For those people on that level, you hear what the women, they say, I no care what you do, you better go find it because the picnic hungry. I worry, in as much as I must understand that whatever is informing the government has informed the government. I am not completely convinced that all alternatives are exhausted, but I respect the democratic process and the majority. I only earnestly, seriously ask that the government activate those mechanisms it has to target those things that will be a natural domino effect from people losing their access to the full value of their work. Demoralized people not only are demoralized in work, but a character shattering can happen, a personality shattering can happen, and we can see different people emerging out of sufferation. And so that is the basis of my real, true worry. We have been outspoken of late about mental health. What do we expect will be the fallout from people who are pulling out their hairs and biting their nails about their bills? So if it is on the one hand we cut and we must cut, I say and I suggest, Madam President, on the other hand, please do those things that will support the people in being able to shoulder the bokut. Thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Osmani Salas.
Thank you, Madam President. As I said in my budget remarks, Madam President, this is and continues to be a tough one for our community, I'm sure for all our social partners. I just want to start off, Madam President, by mentioning a couple facts, I guess I could call them facts. But we need to keep something in mind. We need to be real, that whichever party won the elections in November, on November 11th last year, would have been faced with this situation, would have had to make some tough decisions. The previous Prime Minister said it, and I said it at the last session, and I'll repeat it again, that the next administration will be handed a poison chalice, whichever party won. Whichever party won. So, based on what I've read, if we would try and look at this objectively, my mask, I'm so used to my mask, sorry. we would have to accept that the only reason the previous administration did not make some of these tough decisions is that an election was upon us. And it would have been political madness to do something like that. We all remember what happened with the retrenchment under Prime Minister Esquivel, and when that was done. It's all about timing. And I also need to acknowledge that the only way that this current administration is countenancing this is because we don't have any looming elections upon us, and because of what I guess they see as the massive support they have had. Anyway, with your permission, Madam President, I would like to read a very short paragraph from a May 25th article entitled "Belize Defaults on Debt for Second Time in a Year." And this is a statement made by the S&P analysts. And by the way, another downgrade was triggered, right? The paragraph states, Belize faces a constrained fiscal position and has low external liquidity. Social and financial pressures caused by the pandemic, given Belize's precarious economy and health system, have shifted the government's policy priorities and weakened its capacity to pay its debt service. The article also refers to the Belize dollar notes lingering in distress territory. As I mentioned in my budget remarks, our single largest budget item is our wage bill. That in the previous fiscal year was close to 40%. It's still in the mid-30s. We're talking about over $460 million. So I guess we would have probably looked at this differently if it were the sole prescription a government would want to put in place. And yes, we abstained when it came time to approve the budget. Our community, our NGO community has been struggling on this. They have been, honestly, they've been struggling on this matter. We continue the engagement, and we've shifted our position. The vast majority now, the vast majority of our good standing members who have weighed in on this matter agree that we should support this bill. So the other fact we need to mention is that just like with the budget in April, this public sector emoluments and allowances reduction bill now, it will pass. It's a money bill. We can't block it even if we wanted. So we should invest our energies in what next? What should we expect and demand from government? If, as the Prime Minister has asked us all to share in the sacrifice, then what sacrifice commitments must government make? Because yes, it's painful for everybody, for business owners, for the employees in the private sector. It will be painful. It has been painful for the public sector employees. So yes, if we call it a sacrifice, what will we get out of that? Now, one of the first things I want to mention is, as stated in Section 7 of the bill at hand, that during the relevant period, the minister responsible for finance shall annually review the public finances and may reduce the percentage of reduction in Section 4. To me, a reduction is all the way to zero, right? Could be. So now, we must expect and demand that that annual review is conducted, but we must also demand that that review is done in a transparent manner. In a transparent manner. It's no secret that trust in government tends to be low all over the world. So what can we do, or I should put it this way, what we must do is for government and Parliament to put things in place to ensure that a review like this is done transparently and involves the different partners. Let's not hide any figures. Let's be honest with the figures. Let's put it out there so that the earliest we can reduce the reduction, ideally all the way to zero, then we should do it. And not wait until, what is it? Until March 31st, 2024. We also need to ensure and demand from government that we indeed adjust the wage bill downward. We need to do that comprehensive evaluation of the public sector, as I mentioned before, that needs to be done. But this is where I want to associate myself with some of the comments that have been said, previously by some of my colleagues, that as an example of how this reduction, what this bill seeks to accomplish, could be a little more palatable to everyone, is to see the government doing its share. And what I'm noticing with the current administration, that occurred under the previous administration as well, is that we have a top-heavy cabinet. I have to agree with what my colleagues have said on this earlier. When I ask, why do we need so many ministers and ministers of state? Why? For a country the size of Belize, why do we need so many? And a healthy democracy, and it's always a challenge and an effort to remain as healthy as we can, as far as our democracy is concerned, speaks to the separation of powers. And as I've said before, when you have a situation where most of the ruling parties, representatives, parliamentarians, area reps, are also cabinet members, puts us in some worrying territory. And so I mentioned that as to say that one of the various ways that government can demonstrate that yes, we are all in this together, is looking at that, looking at those numbers. Are there ways that some of these portfolios can be consolidated, which would effectively increase the number of backbenchers, right? Now, we also need to acknowledge, and we have to give credit where it is due. As I mentioned earlier, as I referred to earlier, this is not the only prescription that government has put forward. In its recovery plan that the Prime Minister spoke about back in April, was in his budget speech, this would be one of a 5-pronged recovery plan. And just to remind the public, the others refer to a drastic reduction in the spending on goods and services. We must stay on the alert. We must demand, we must expect that happens, because that's part and parcel of the recovery plan. The other one is a reduction in interest payments. And yeah, I know from what I can follow on the news and from speaking to folks that government is working hard for this to happen. Really and truly, I think we need to wish them the best and hope that they are successful at reduction in interest payments. We depend on that. The augmentation of revenues, tax revenues, is another one. It's easier said than done. But the public will start to be more trustful when they start to see this augmentation happening, arrears being collected. And as many have said, there are few that owe millions. When you put it together, go after that. And as I mentioned back in April, from talking to the Belize Tax Services, there is work that has to be done to have a good understanding of what is collectible. That is nearly 2 months ago that I spoke to them. It would be good to get an update on where that stands. And enabling investment is the fifth prong of that recovery plan, as the Prime Minister announced, which will have, impact over a medium term as opposed to short term. So these are the demands we need to make. And my colleague from the business community said it well. What's the alternative to such a five-pronged economic recovery plan? God forbid we have the IMF right on our backs. And if we depend on them to bail us out, then they will start to put we will be obligated then to do a whole host of things that will make the pain even worse. Increasing GST possibly, removing exempted items, retrenchment, that word we don't like to hear, and God forbid devaluing our dollar. And I really am of the firm opinion that the general public does not fully comprehend what the consequences of devaluation would be. And I would want to encourage government to be open about what that can be, so the public understands why, no matter which party is in power, they do their darndest best to avoid having to go that road because of how painful that to be in the short to medium term. Some economists say that there might be benefits over the long term for that, but in the short term, would we be able to take that? I wouldn't want to think so. So, Madam President, what this bill is trying to do, in a way we can say is an evil, Madam President, but it's a necessary evil at this time. And we should do all we can, and expect government to do all it can to ensure that it does not persist beyond its needs. That it does not persist beyond its needs. With that, I thank you, Madam President.
I recognize Senator Isabel Bennett.
Good morning, Madam President. Just a few observations as it relates to the public sector emolument and allowance reduction bill 2021. In some aspects, based on what have been said, the Belizean public may seem to think that it's all doom and gloom, that there isn't anything that is happening in the country that can move us forward. But world history does indicate that as human beings, we become very resilient. And when we have leaders that are very visionary, when we have leaders that have a mindset of growth, we can definitely know for sure that we will be on the other side of COVID. And I say that to say that it's not all lost with this bill. Yes, we will have our public officers or teachers affected, even us in the parliament, but as people, we need to be able to utilize certain things. Minimalism is therefore one of those concepts that we need to activate in our own personal lives so that we can manage the scarce resources that we have at an individual basis, and collectively we'll be able to move, as I said earlier, on the other side of COVID. if I remember correctly, I think I heard Minister Perafit said that the minister's salary should not be cut. I could be corrected if that's what he did not say. But I do believe that it should not have been cut. However, because we have a leader that is a true listener, and we have a leader as a prime minister that listens and he moves by example, he has therefore made it an example to say to the Belizean people, we're committed to the way forward. In addition, as I even stand here and know that my stipend, because senators don't get a salary, senators get a stipend, a bare stipend, I believe in the whole concept of utilitarianism. It's the greatest good for the greatest number. And so if my personal salary would be touched for the benefit of the larger society, I am fully committed and fully support this bill because the greater population of Belize, the 400,000 plus people, will benefit in the longer run. So we cannot be short-sighted and just disregard or do not support this bill. We have to think in the long term. We have to know that as a nation, we need to support each other. And so even as I think about tourism, tourism has been one of the largest income growing industry for Belize. Where are these people now? They are the ones that are jobless, and they are the ones who have actually been providing for this country. It's because of their effort why we were able to get a decent salary. But yet we are saying in some instance that we cannot give up a 10% because while they have none, that is short-sightedness. It's utter selfishness. We must look at the further, bigger picture. How did we get here? Was it just because of COVID? Most certainly not. But I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty or the criticism part of where was your voice before or during the 13 years. I'm not about that. I am about having a growth mindset, looking at what we have before us to be able to support the wider nation on a whole. And so collectively as a people, when COVID occurred, you could have seen that there was a flooding of innovation, a flooding of creativity by Belizeans. And it was a trend that was happening worldwide because people in lockdown used their talents, used their creativity to start generate income. And so it's not all lost because you're going to get a 10% cut. There's so many other things that you can start to do on the side to generate income and have an additional source of income. And I know of many public officers, and in addition, many teachers who have already explored and starting to enjoy the whole journey of entrepreneurship. Madam Speaker, we always ask that our farmers be diverse in the way that they do their farming. And so collectively now, as a nation, we all have to be diverse in how we generate income as well. To depend on one's salary in this time and era is not realistic. You have to be diverse. And so when I look at this bill, I know for sure that collectively as a people, we're going to use that resilient button that we have. Public officers will continue to be effective and efficient in delivering service to the country. And for those who are not, I know that at some point they will start. So overall, when I think about the bill again, the fact that our tourism industry is so much affected, and the fact that we are lending a hand by being unselfish and accepting the 10% cut, we know that that larger portion of the population will benefit eventually. A growth mindset is what we have and what we will continue to use, not a fixed mindset. And in addition, or in closing, I like to say that we always utilize a quotation from J.F. Kennedy: ask what your country can do for you. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. And this is what we ask of everyone today, so that our nation can be on the other side of COVID. I thank you.
I recognize Senator Colette Montejo.
Madam President, my remarks this afternoon will be very, very brief as I stand in support of this motion. I listened to our good senator representing the unions, and while the bill focused basically on the salary cut, I heard nothing in relation to what became sort of the hallmark of the union strike, which was good governance, accountability, nothing of that sort. And I wonder why, because at the heart of this salary cut is the issue of good governance. It's the fact that we went through years and years of blatant disregard for basic economic principles from the former administration at all levels. Madam President, the issue goes beyond the 10%, because as far as the government is concerned, there's still a problem with the 90%. And I think we're forgetting that. We are so focused on the 10% that we are forgetting the 90%, for which we are still being forced almost on a monthly basis to borrow. Am I right, Senator Koi? So until we can right this ship and get this economy back moving again, we have to remind ourselves that the wage bill is still a problem. And I cannot and I will not allow us to forget that fact. I heard Senator Pitt speak as it relates to consumer protection. And that for me has been, it eats me up when I think about it. Because obviously there are issues that has to be addressed. And I know that on this side, those issues are being addressed. Consumer protection, there will be put things in place to ensure that we protect the Belizean consumer. However, as I was sharing with one of the CEOs responsible the other day, was reminded of the fact that many businesses, and our senator from the business sector will agree that the cost of shipping has skyrocketed to points that, man, people that used to pay $1,000 to ship something, all of a sudden are paying an extra 100%, $2,000, $3,000 to ship the very same things. And these are prices that are being passed on to consumers. So a lot of things has to be addressed. And it's only as we do it compositely, as we do it together, that it's going to be fixed. So as I look at this bill, Madam President, I want to remind us, yes, we are focused on the 10%, But government, even in the time of this pandemic, and looking at the whole good governance structure, passing all these laws to ensure that what happened under the previous administration doesn't happen again, government still has to, on a monthly basis, find, with revenue shrinking and shrinking, government still has to find that 90%. And it is with this spirit in mind that I personally gladly share and support this motion, because we cannot, simply right now, cannot afford the high salary that has to be paid on a monthly basis. Thank you, Madam.
Recognize Senator Eamon Courtney, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'll be brief in winding up the debate on the Public Sector Emoluments and Allowances Reduction Bill 2021. Madam President, as I said, budget debate, absolutely no one in this Senate today, on either side and the social partners, take any joy in passing this piece of legislation. And so I say to all the senators, don't come here pretending that any one of you are more concerned than any one of us. We don't enjoy this. We take no pleasure in doing this. And do not for a second believe that we are insensitive. Do not for a second believe that we are not fully aware of the pain that it causes. But there is a reality. The Honorable John Briceño and his government was elected to fix a problem. I repeat what the Financial Secretary said when asked how long will it take for us to go over the cliff. He said, we are already over. I repeat what I said. The IMF is demanding and proposing I repeat, retrenchment, tax increase, devaluation. If senators believe that this is a bukut, then they can choose an IMF disaster. We have chosen, Senator Salas is right, this is an evil. We have chosen the lesser of some evils. 3 evils. We could continue to borrow till we go broke. We can go down the IMF road, or we can choose this homegrown approach. Again, Senator Herrera said he's trained to analyze figures, has carefully looked at this matter, and can find no other alternative. I congratulate the NGO network for continuing its study and to have changed its position where today it supports the legislation. Let us not undervalue the significance of that. It points to a group of people that have continued their study and evaluation of the reality of our predicament and have the maturity to change their position. And I say that in distinction to those who are stuck and are inflexible and are blinded by their politics. You can say no to this all you want. Then you are saying to the Belizean people you prefer us to continue to spend $1 million a day. You are saying to the Belizean people that you want us to borrow hundreds of millions of dollars a day or a year. You are saying to the Belizean people Let us continue over the cliff and let us go to devaluation. I listened to Senator Perfeet and say that the United Democratic Party has not accepted that there should be a salary cut. That's all fine for them to say. What is the alternative, Mr. Perfeet? Silence. It is posturing. That is what it is. It is talk for talk's sake. Let the record reflect, Madam President. This government is the first government to present a 5-year plan. This bill is a part of the 5-point recovery process for this year, but it is part of a 5-year plan. The call by Senator Salas is the call that I said on the last occasion for consultation and dialogue on this issue. It is a national crisis. God forbid that next year we have to come here and say that the outturn is not what we expect and therefore there has to be a tax increase. God forbid that we have to say the revenue we expected we did not collect, the cut in expenditure was not sufficient, the cut in salaries was not sufficient, and therefore we have to lay off people. So clause 4, or clause 7 I think it is, clause 7, which calls for the annual review. You know, Senator Salas, when I heard you referring to it, I remember as a part of the negotiating process, the unions were offered to join this committee. There are a list of things that the unions have rejected. It's incredible that we are here today and they are still not able to bring the negotiations to an end, to understand the reality of where we are. Coping mechanisms have been offered and still not accepted. That's not the way we act in the national interest. So, Madam President, colleagues, we passed this bill with a heavy heart. But I call civil society, the business community, the labor union, the churches, the opposition, to join with us, to continue to find a way out of this dark place that we are. We can have difference of opinions and difference of views. We can be politically on different sides of the political divide, but we all have to be on the same side for Belize. Madam President, I ask that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to provide in the public interest for the reduction in salaries and allowances of certain persons appointed to hold a public office having regard to the deteriorated state of public finance and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to provide in the public interest for the reduction in salaries and allowances of certain persons appointed to hold a public office, having regard to the deteriorated state of public finances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Committee of the Whole, Senate on Motions and Bills.
Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 68A, the Senate will now resolve itself into the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee, a committee of the whole Senate, to consider the motions referred to it and, thereafter, in accordance with Standing Order 54, the committee of the whole Senate to consider the bills that were read a second time. Honorable members, I will now take the chair as the chairman of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee and then as the chairperson of the committee of the whole Senate. And members, visitors, please leave the gallery. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the Constitutional and Foreign Affairs Committee has met and considered the motion to consider the approval by the National Assembly of the disposition of the Commerce by Port to Ecological Systems Limited 2021 and has agreed that it be returned to the Senate for adoption. I therefore move that the question be put.
Honorable members, in accordance with Standing Order 28-2, I will propose this motion as two separate questions. First, the question is, now therefore be it resolved that the lease dated the 9th day of November 2020 of the Commerce by Port for 25 years for the sum of $5 million and 1% of its gross revenue for the preceding year to Ecological be approved. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. Those against kindly say no. I think the noes have it. Second, the question is, now therefore be it resolved that the lease dated the 9th day of November 2020 of the Commerce by Port for 25 years for the sum of $5 million and 1% of its gross revenue for the preceding year to Ecological be disapproved. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The motion is therefore disapproved. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the Constitutional and Foreign Affairs Committee has met and considered the resolution approving the appointment of members of the Mines and Minerals Dispute Board Motion 2021 and has agreed that it be returned back to the Senate for adoption. I therefore move that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House, having perused the curricula vitae of both Mr. Ian Gillett, licensed land surveyor, and Mr. Arsenio Burgos, accountant, and been satisfied that both are fit and proper persons to be appointed as members of the board under the Act, hereby approve the appointment of both Mr. Ian Gillett, licensed land surveyor, and Mr. Arsenio Burgos, accountant, as members of the Mining Conflict Resolution Board with effect from the first day of June 2021. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, the Constitutional and Foreign Affairs Committee has met and considered the resolution authorizing the ratification by Belize of the revised standard text of the Small Quantities Protocol under the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement in connection to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, Motion 2021, and has agreed that it be returned back to the Senate for adoption. I therefore move that the question be put.
Honorable members, the question is now, therefore be it resolved that the Senate authorizes the government of Belize to ratify the revised standard text of the Small Quantities Protocol. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Reading of bills.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Income and Business Tax Amendment Bill 2021 and passed it without amendment. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to enhance Belize's competitiveness and stimulate renewed growth in the international financial services sector, and to provide for matters connecting therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Income and Business Tax Act, Chapter 55 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to enhance Belize's competitiveness and stimulate renewed growth in the international financial services sector, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Court of Appeal Amendment Number 2, Bill 2021, and passed it without amendment. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Court of Appeal Act, Chapter 90 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2011, to expand the composition of the Court of Appeal and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole Senate has considered the Public Sector Emoluments and Allowances Reduction Bill 2021 and passed it as amended. I now move that the bill be read a third time.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to provide in the public interest for the reduction in salaries and allowances of certain persons appointed to hold a public office, having regard to the deteriorated state of public finances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto, be read a third time. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to provide in the public interest for the reduction in salaries and allowances of certain persons appointed to hold a public office, having regard to the deteriorated state of public finances, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. The Senate now stands adjourned.